Hello and welcome back students to the next module of the chapter where we'll be basically focusing on spontaneous and non-spontaneous reactions which are there. Talking about spontaneous reaction, a spontaneous reaction is a reaction that takes place on its own without the external influence which is there. That means what is non-spontaneous reaction? A reaction which cannot take place on its own. It will generally require a continuous external influence which is there. There are certain features of a spontaneous reactions which are there. Precisely four. Let's take the first one. It is always unidirectional. Since it is unidirectional, it is irreversible which is there. Generally, spontaneous reactions are no longer considering the speed, means how fast the reaction is going. It is only saying that the reaction will start. That means it is not concerned with the rate of the reaction. It will proceed only till equilibrium, and all the naturally occurring processes are generally spontaneous which are there. Now to understand that, let's take an example, that is relation between spontaneity and energy. Say for example, what is a spontaneous reaction? A reaction that takes place on its own. Now since we are doing chemical reactions, that means we will be involved with reactants and products. So say for example, we have a reaction in which a reactant is getting converted to product, and reactant is already having more amount of energy. Now since the reactant is having already certain extra amount of energy, the reactants won't wait for anybody to start. The reactant on its own will get converted to product, and that is where the product will be having certain less amount of energy, and that means that extra amount of energy is lost in the surrounding, and that is why the reaction is exothermic. And that is why it can be said that this reaction is likely to be spontaneous since the reactant is having some extra amount of energy. But what if the reactant is having certain less amount of energy? If the reactant is having certain less amount of energy, then in that case certain extra amount of energy has to be provided. So after providing that energy, only then the reaction will start, and that is where the product will have comparatively more amount of energy. That means the reaction won't start unless and until somebody provides energy, and that is why the reaction will be ideally in that case endothermic. So this type of reactions are likely to be non-spontaneous. So suppose if I want to derive a relation between energy and spontaneity, if the reactant is having more amount of energy, then the reaction is spontaneous. That means can I say the relation between energy and spontaneity is directly proportional? And the relation between energy and stability, more the energy, lesser will be the stability. That means it is inversely proportional which is there. Let's understand that with the help of an example. So the first example is acid-base neutralization reaction. Suppose if we consider an acid and a base, instantaneously they will react to give you salt and water, and if it reacts instantaneously, certain amount of energy should be lost. And if you check the delta H value, yes, the answer is exothermic. That means can I say since the reaction is exothermic, the reaction is likely to be spontaneous, and yes, it is a spontaneous reaction. The reaction happens directly. Let us consider the second example, that's melting of ice above 0 degrees Celsius. Can I say above 0 degrees Celsius, it doesn't require any help. It will directly convert the reaction from solid to liquid which is there. But if you see the delta H value, it is plus 6 kilojoules. That means the reaction is happening, but after absorbing that much amount of energy, that means the reaction is endothermic. If the reaction is endothermic, ideally reaction should be non-spontaneous. But here we find that this reaction is a spontaneous reaction. So this is a spontaneous reaction after absorbing energy. The previous one was spontaneous reaction after emitting energy. Let's take the third one, that is dissolving of salt in water. As soon as NaCl is dissolved in water, instantaneously Na plus and Cl minus are getting formed. And if you see the delta H value carefully, even here the value is positive. That means once again it is absorbing certain amount of energy and the reaction is spontaneous. That means reaction is endothermic since the value is positive. So ideally reaction should be non-spontaneous, but it is found as spontaneous which are there. And for the last example, that is conversion of N2O4 to NO2 above 400 Kelvin, it is found that the delta H value is positive. Once again delta H value is positive. that means the reaction is endothermic. That means the reaction should be non-spontaneous. But it is found that the reaction is spontaneous. That means energy or enthalpy is not the only criteria to decide the spontaneity of a reaction. This is what we'll be covering in this module. Let's quickly take certain MCQs which could be asked based on this module. The first question says, a spontaneous reaction is a reaction which takes place with the help of external influence, or it is taking place without the external influence, or it depends on temperature, pressure and concentration, or none of these. And I guess the answer is very simple. Spontaneous reaction is a reaction which takes place without any external influence, and the option is B. Let's take the next question. Question says relation between energy and stability. And I guess the answer is very simple, and the answer is relation between energy and stability is inversely proportional. The last question, relation between energy and spontaneity. And the relation between energy and spontaneity is directly proportional. That's option A. This is what we'll be doing in this module. Thank you.